Oh, muna na siya mama.
Sige lang, kaya nag-cutter na siya for everything else. Thank you so much. Okay, recording is going on.
Guys, good na lang tayo. Mag-record si Ma'am Claire. Ba't nila
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you see me? Can you hear me rather?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sorry about that. No, we have to do some technical checks because there were changes and improvements that we need. It's because this Google Meet session is being recorded. I am going to start now. So I have 11 students, that's fine. I'm going to look for my files now so that we can begin. I'm going to turn on my camera. Hold on for a while. Off ko pa din siya. Yeah, pala. Check na ko sa settings, camera failed.
Di ba naghanap ka?
Paano mo ba ganina, di ba?
Oo. Ba't wala? Wala.
Ay, sabay. Guys, ito balik, diba?
Go.
Balik dito.
Sinabi sa OBS, di ba? Pag-run sa OBS.
Kung mati ka
Sa recorder.
Nag-run na? Nag-run ang recorder niya, pero saan mo pagin Google Quad? Kanatang, oo, do. Ano ito recorder?
Okay, good. Mura kinaan na siya sa putod niya ka. Thank you. everyone. Sorry about that because we had some technical difficulties. Sorry about that. We have some technical difficulties because we are checking the camera and we are also checking the recording, making sure that we are able to capture everything in Google Meet. So let me check a few more times. Can I be heard? Can you clearly see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Is my camera working?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Right, thank you. There are already 22 of you attending, so we will begin now. This is a 1-hour class for purposive communication. So let me share my screen. Can you see my slides? Can you see my slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can see it. Good. How about that one? Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. So I'm presenting now the slides for my lecture this afternoon, and my lecture this afternoon has something to do with the discussion that we had previously. Okay. By the way, later on, let me call you by your first names. So I will now begin. Okay. So good afternoon. This our 1-hour class will now begin, and let's start by asking you a few things on what we have learned previously, the one that has been posted especially on Google Classroom, to follow up on some of the things that we have learned in class. So I would like to ask Kenneth Rose. Kenneth, can you please enumerate some of the tips or let's say techniques that you understand about effective listening or active listening? Just give me one. Kenneth, are you still there? How about Evangeline?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Kenneth. Yes, you're back. Kenneth, can you please give us at least one tip on how to effectively listen or how to become an active listener? Just one tip.
Face the speaker.
Okay, correct. How about Evangeline? Can you give one tip or technique in effective or active listening?
Listen to nonverbal cues to pay. Pay attention to what others person is saying with their body language.
Okay, good. Another one, let's have Clark. One tip on effective or active listening.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, can you give us one tip on active or effective listening?
Active listening. Wait lang, ma'am.
Okay.
Ensure or getting and losing. Uh, ensure
Yes, go on.
ensure get using it effectively for better performance.
Okay, good. So it's good that when you say effective or active listening, your performance as a listener or as an audience will actually improve because you will focus on what is being described or what is being or the message that is being transferred by the speaker to its audience. Good. So these are just a few things that I wanted to recall on active or effective listening. We also discussed barriers of communication. And this is very important right now because our next topic will be crucial in you becoming the speaker this time and how to be conscious when it comes to your audience, to your listener, how to take care of them as a speaker and how to be able to hold their interest and their attention, okay, you as a speaker. Moving on. So this afternoon, I want you to recall a particular public speaker, okay? Anyone that you have met, or maybe it could be a video presentation that you have watched on social media platforms. It could be YouTube, perhaps. And I want you to recall a particular public figure, a public speaker that has given a speech on an audience. And if you can recall their name, good. If you can recall maybe the title of their speech, that's also good. But I would want to ask you a few things on what made you, or what kind of impression rather, these public speakers have left to you as listeners or as the audience. Okay, so before that, let me emphasize why we are concentrating on public speaking right now. So public speaking is something that is done when you are giving speeches on a public, okay? Meaning you are giving speeches to an audience, right? Now, right now, our setup is actually an example of a public speaking. However, my goal is for you to learn about a particular topic, and you are my audience, okay? So, generally speaking, the speaker is the dominant person or the dominant speaker giving information or message to its audience. So, most of the time, the audience tend to listen. Okay? But there are also times wherein the audience is given rather the opportunity to interact with the speaker. Okay? So generally the speaker is in control of the discussion. So you could also provide visual aids or electronic or any graphic setup that you want your listeners to look into. Now, aside from the fact that you are looking at the speaker, it's also very important that you have some electronic slideshow so that you can actually partner your words, your speech with illustrations. It is a way to stimulate your audience. Okay? So let me ask you a few questions just to recall who these public speakers that you have seen or you have watched or you have witnessed giving a speech in the podium. Okay? So it could be local, national, or international figure. Okay? So these questions are the following. So who is the public speaker you admire the most? Why do you like him or her as a public speaker? You can actually name one quality of him or her as a public speaker that you admire the most. Okay? And then recall one of his or her speeches that you watch or maybe you have personally attended. It could be before or during the pandemic. Okay? Or what was the speech about? Okay? So just a simple recall. Let's have Jezan. Have I pronounced your name correctly, Ms. Cajeras? I hope I did. Okay, Jezan.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, can you please give us a public speaker that you admire the most?
For me, ma'am, it's okay. I can choose our president,
Yes,
Mr.
yes.
Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
Yes, yes, okay. Why Rodrigo Duterte, Jezan?
Yes. I choose him because he is really directly, when he is going to speak, he is direct to the point, to the person or the thing that he wanted to be done for everybody or for the everyone.
Okay, thank you, Jezza. How
That's it,
about,
ma'am.
yes, thank you. How about, let's have Angela Marie. Okay. Can you give us a public speaker that you admire the most, Angela?
Both chances is my favorite speaker, ma'am.
Okay. Why, yes, why this person?
Because he's an intelligent person and he's having a sense of humor and he motivates other people.
Okay, thank you. How about, I would like to ask John Kim, Mr. Sundo. Okay. Can you give me the name of a public speaker you admire the most? John, are you still there? How about, I think we are losing John right now. How about Christian Louis, Mr. Valiente? Are you there, Christian? Yes, Ivy, you are raising your hand.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes. Can you give us the name of a public speaker that you admire the most? Ivy? Okay, it's okay, Christian. I'll just get back to you later. Ivy? Is there a particular public speaker that you admire the most? Okay, I think I am actually seeing Christian's answer. I'll get back at Ivy later. No, he said that it's President Duterte again. Okay. It seems like a lot of you are very updated on current events, especially here in the Philippines. Okay. So I guess one way or another you have witnessed or maybe attended this public figure's speech. And it could be that it has left you an impression because most of you answered that you like the idea of a speaker who is very direct in his or her speeches. Now, I guess you are actually the type of generation who would like things to be straightforward, okay? Not wasting time on informing you about what the speaker wants you to know. I guess it's actually a very unique characteristic for an audience. But let's see if you are also the same thing as a speaker. Okay. So moving on. Okay. I'm going to show you a video on a speech. No, I don't know if you know her, but she's a famous British actress. She played the role of Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter series. If you have watched at least one of the 7 movies. And she gave a speech to the United Nations, and I am going to show you a speech that she made, and it's actually a 3 to 4 minute speech, so please take note of her speech, and this will be the questions that I will be asking you later on. So take note, how did the speaker start his or her speech? Okay, on this note, we are talking about Emma Watson. How did she start her speech? How did Emma Watson organize his or her speech? It's very important to take note of the organizational style that she used. Also, how did Emma Watson concluded her speech? How did she ended it? And then what do you think is the goal of Emma Watson in her speech? Like, what would be the things that she wanted her speakers to know? And then, lastly, do you think the speaker was able to achieve, or do you think that Emma Watson, in her speech, was she able to achieve that goal? Okay, and what made you say so? As the listener, I want you to evaluate her speech. Okay? So just take note of it, and I will be asking you questions regarding her speech. So let me find her speech. You can actually see it on YouTube.
Buksan at tikman ang cream.
Alright, so let me share my screen so that I'm going to stop sharing for a while because I need to do the setup so that you can hear the audio. Okay, just tell me if you can hear the audio or see the video. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to play I'm going to play it for a few seconds so that I'll know if you can hear the audio. Can you hear the audio?
Yes,
Okay, good.
Yes.
So we will continue watching it now.
I was appointed 6 months ago. And the more I've spoken about feminism, the more I have realized that fighting for women's rights has too often become synonymous with man-hating. If there is one thing I know for certain, it is that this has to stop. For the record, feminism by definition is the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. It is the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. I started questioning gender-based assumptions a long time ago. When I was 8, I was confused at being called bossy because I wanted to direct the plays that we would put on for our parents. But the boys were not. When at 14, I started to be sexualized by certain elements of the media. When at 15, my girlfriends started dropping out of their beloved sports teams because they didn't want to appear muscly. When at 18, my male friends were unable to express their feelings. I decided that I was a feminist, and this seemed uncomplicated to me. But my recent research has shown me that feminism has become an unpopular word. Women are choosing not to identify as feminist. Apparently, I am among the ranks of women whose expressions are seen as too strong, too aggressive, isolating, and anti-men, unattractive even. Why has the word become such an uncomfortable one? I am from Britain, and I think it is right that I am paid the same as my male counterparts. I think it is right that I should be able to make decisions about my own body. I think it is right that women be involved on my behalf in the policies and the decisions that will affect my life. I think it is right that socially I am afforded the same respect as men. But sadly, I can say that there is no one country in the world where all women can expect to receive these rights. No country in the world can yet say that they have achieved gender equality. Thank you very, very much.
Okay. Let me get back to my slides. That was actually a short speech by Emma Watson that she gave when she was invited to an assembly of nations here, the United Nations in New York. Okay. She was given the opportunity to share to everyone on her views on gender equality, which is something that a lot of us people, a term or an issue that a lot of us here, not only in the Philippines, but all around the world, when it comes to feminism, gender equality, something that we always hear. If you're active in social media platforms, it is something that you would constantly hear or read among a lot of people. So it's an issue in the 21st century. And she called the speech the balancing act. Okay? Since we are talking about gender equality, Emma Watson thinks that equality has something to do with maintaining balance, regardless of gender and sexuality. Okay? So now that you got to hear her speech, okay, so I would like to ask a few of you on some of the things that you understood on her speech before we can focus on what we are really going to discuss this afternoon. So it's very important that you see and hear someone, okay, who is able to discuss a few important issues in our time. So I would like to ask Ariane Jones. Okay, Ariane, are you here with us? Is Ariane here? Or okay, I don't think she can hear me. I think I will ask Carl Elaine instead. Carl Elaine, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Hi, Carl. I would like to ask, how do you think the speaker started her speech? How do you think Emma Watson started her speech?
He started the speech is when she was 14, she experienced sexualized.
Sexualized by what? By whom?
By someone or her relationship.
Okay, so correct. You actually mentioned the term sexualized. When she was 14, she was actually sexualized by the media. But before that, she actually experienced being called bossy because she wanted to direct plays to present to their parents. But then she noticed that some of her male classmates was not called as such. Okay, that really left an impression to her. Next, how did you think Emma Watson organized her speech? Okay, I would like to ask Clark Vincent. Clark, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Clark. How did you think Emma Watson organized her speech?
like sa yang gingon like man sa like sa feminism
Correct.
like her age na naka try siya mga media about sa mga about sa ba to? Feminism. So yeah, sa
Okay.
pag-organize niya ma'am yang napakita like kaning dapat all female must be kaning like kaning sa kaning respect or kaning dapat silang dili bitaw sila dapat inano sa mga uban like mga ipakita nga inabastos or like dapat naging sila respetuhon yung sila maayo ma'am like ipairal gyud dapat ang gender inequality.
Okay, thank you, Clark. So I guess you're talking about Emma emphasizing through her speech that women are experiencing somehow discrimination, or maybe somehow they are being put into a disadvantage at a certain stages in their lives. Because remember that she started her speech when she was young, no? Around when she was 10, 14 years old. So she started to recall experiences when she was still young until the age that she was already working, especially at the time when she was already casted as Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter series. Okay, good. Next, how did you think Emma Watson concluded her speech? How did she ended it? Okay, I would like to ask Angela Marie, Miss DeSere.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. How did Emma Watson ended her speech?
Indeed, his speech is about to fight about the equality for women and to improve the violation.
Okay, correct. She did emphasize that this discrimination must be put into an end, and therefore we must put more emphasis on policies or even traditions or maybe beliefs. No, correct those beliefs that no gender is above another. That all of us are actually should be on the same page, and there should be a balance of treatment between men and women, or regardless of gender, especially when it comes to the concept of feminism. Okay? What do you think was her goal in her speech? Like, what is her main objective? Why did she give that speech? Okay? I would like to ask, let's have Princess Abigail.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Princess. What do you think was the goal of Emma Watson in her speech? Like, what do you think is her aim for you as an audience?
Kuan, ma'am. The speaker goal is about to spread the equality of genders, like she stated ganina nga kuan, like she is from that country, and ibayaran og tarong ang malalaki, so dapat bayaran pud siya og tarong kay tungod babae pud siya. In that kuan, ma'am, in that sentence nag-inform siya ganang equality.
Okay, thank you. So her main aim is to establish equality and the importance of treating men and women equally. Correct. Now, do you think, okay, just answer me with a yes or a no. And then we will try to find out later on if your answer is actually in connection to what happened to, or what was the impact of the speech of Emma Watson. Okay? So, yes or no? Do you think the speaker, Emma Watson, was able to achieve her goal in her speech? Do you think her speech was able to create the impact that she wanted her listeners to see or feel or perhaps think? Was it effective? Was she able to achieve her goal?
No.
No, okay. How about the others?
No, ma'am.
Okay, no. Other answers? This is actually me trying to gauge how did you feel or what were you thinking when you were listening to her speech. Because your answer right now will be crucial to our topic later on. Was it effective or not? Was she able to achieve her goal as
Yes,
a speaker? Okay, some of you said yes.
No, ma'am.
Okay, no. So
Yes,
another one. Okay, yes. Okay. So it seems like your reaction is very interesting, since you're actually you have different reactions to her speech. Okay. Now, what I've shown you is actually a recorded speech of Emma Watson in the United States. So somehow, as a virtual audience, okay, seeing it for yourselves and watching the recorded speech actually elicits different reactions from the audience, and it's interesting to know that you have a divided opinion in regards to whether she was able to deliver the message, whether she was able to express her opinions, and whether her goal in that speech, whatever that goal is, has created an impact, or was it impactful enough for you to feel something, for you to think of something that what she wanted you to know as an audience, no? Regardless of race, regardless of nationality, and regardless of time and space. So let's get to understand, why is it that you had different or mixed reactions with that speech? Okay, so what we will discuss is something that will look like this. Okay, you see this girl, very busy with her laptop. Something that all of us are usually doing right now, whatever gadgets you have. And she's opening a lot of windows, sources of information. It could be, let's say, the very basic ones. We have Wikipedia, or maybe we are also browsing YouTube and looking at other sources of information like websites or maybe your social media platforms. And it seems like the clock is running around because we are browsing information nonstop nowadays. It could be TikTok, it could be Instagram, it could be Facebook. We are actually surrounded by a barrage of information in this time and age. Unlike before, you can just browse newspapers or even books in the library. But now we have a lot of chances, opportunities to look for information. Okay? So our topic for this afternoon is speech writing. So you might say, what's the connection of public speaking with speech writing? We're actually doing a backtrack, okay, of what public speakers have to experience for them to deliver a speech. Now, before you deliver a speech, the first thing that you have to do is this one. You need to write your speech. Okay? So others call it speech writing because, of course, the word itself is quite obvious. We write our speeches. You see, there are a lot of public figures who have ghost writers, meaning their speech is written by someone for them. Or there are also the very talented speakers that they write their speech and then deliver it to the audience. But most of the time, they really have talented writers to write their speech for them. And these speech writers actually also becomes a guide or a trainer. Okay? They train them on how to deliver their speech. Okay? So it's very critical that you have the skill, not only to deliver a speech, but also to write one. As a matter of fact, the former President Barack Obama, he actually has a ghostwriter. So not all of his speeches are written by him. When he won as the President of the United States, okay, a lot of people was saying that the reason why he won is because he's a very good public speaker. It was his speeches that made him known in the United States of America, because before the presidential elections during his time, only a very few people known him. But when he ran for presidency, it was his speeches his public speaker skills that actually have moved millions of Americans to vote for him as the first black president. When he was seated in office, he actually hired a ghostwriter, and as a public speaker himself, working with a ghostwriter actually made his speeches more memorable when he became the president. And until this very moment, he's still a very influential figure in the United States, in the politics of the United States of America. Okay? So, what is speech writing? Speech writing is the art of conveying a message to the audience through words. Okay? So this is what you do before you deliver a speech. So for this afternoon, these are the things that we will discuss. Okay? We already did the first one, which is for you to discuss some influential public figures that has left an impression to you as listeners or as an audience. And then we actually watched a speech by a famous celebrity. It's delivered in the United Nations in New York. And then this time, we are going to talk about the tips on how to pull off effective speech writing. How can you do these things? Right? How can I write my speech? Okay? Because one way or another, you will deliver a speech in your lifetime. It could be a eulogy. It could be introducing a speaker. It could be, giving a toast to a wedding. Or it could be you giving a speech when you receive an award. Or who knows, in the future, you might run for an office. And it's very important that you know how to interact with your audience so that you can convince them to vote for you. Okay? We never know. So I'm going to discuss a few tips on how to do it. And then the third and the fourth one will be your assessment task for this topic. Okay? So first, you have to write your speech, and then later on, you are going to deliver your speech by recording it. But I will discuss later how you are going to do that. So let's focus on content number 2. Okay? So how do you pull off an effective speech writing? So I hope that you have a good assessment or evaluation of your writing skills. Okay? So remember that speech writing is not only limited to using the English language. Okay? Because again, you have to be number one, you have to establish your purpose. What is your purpose as a writer? What is your purpose as a speaker? Why am I even giving a speech, perhaps? Okay? And why is it that people are actually pushing me to give a speech? Okay? So number one, as a speaker, you have to know your purpose. What is my goal? Your objective. Okay? So remember that the people who are gathered in front of you does not want to waste their time listening to things that are not important to them. So when you are on the stage, before you get to the stage, when you write your speech, identify what information you want people to know from you. Okay? Always remember this. In the 21st century, we only have the attention span of our listeners, even for college students, is only 10 minutes. If you are going to give a 16-minute speech, rest assured that the first 10 minutes, they are still listening to you. After that, they are no longer listening to you. You might be experiencing that right now. Okay? You will only remember what I said on the first part of this class and then the last part of the class. So that's normal because our attention span is getting shorter and shorter. Like look at the TikTok videos. It's only it only lasts for seconds. But why is it that it leaves an impression to us? Okay? Because the purpose is well established. Next, how do you establish purpose? Always ask these questions. What do you want your audience to know from you? If you are going to make an argument, okay, why would you want them to agree with you? For example, you want to endorse a political candidate. And then most likely you know that not everyone agrees with the political candidate that you're endorsing. How are you going to convince them that your political candidate is the right person to vote? Okay, now that's going to be a challenge. Next is that if they already agree with you, why are you giving the speech? Now, what do you want them to do? Okay, now that you have been informed, you have been entertained and persuaded, what is the next thing that your audience needs to do? And lastly, okay, how can your audience benefit from you and what you have to say? So if you're telling them these things, so what is it for them? What's the use of the information to them? Okay? The next tip is audience analysis. This is something that we somehow forget to do. Okay? Get to know your listeners. Get to know your audience. It's the same thing when you actually are getting to know someone, okay? Before you give them your yes, whatever yes that is. It's very important that you get to know them as a person. It's the same thing with speech or with writing speeches, giving and writing speeches. You have to identify who your audience are. Get to know their age, their interests, ethnicity, culture perhaps, gender. Also, what are the things that you think that you should not say in your speech because they might find it offensive, perhaps. So you have to be very careful with how you craft your message in connection with your audience. Okay, so it's very important to be conscious with that. Okay, the next one, okay, is how are you going to create an effective introduction? Now, remember that the speech is very similar with an essay. You need to have your introduction, body, and conclusion. Now, what I'm discussing right now is how you are going to form or structure your speech. Okay? So the next tip is give an effective introduction. How are you going to hook them up to your speech? Say, for example, you have a classroom of students who are very noisy, and you are tasked by your teacher to give a report. Some of them might be sleepy, some of them are playing with their phones, some of them are talking with their classmates, some of them actually are very indifferent, like they are just there for the attendance. How are you going to hook them up with your speech so that they will be interested in what you have to say? Okay? So establish also context or motive, and just like what you said a while ago, get to the point. Do not waste time in having long introductions. Right away, get their attention the moment you step on the podium. Okay? Next tip is that you have to make your speech easy to understand. Just because you are using difficult words doesn't mean that you are intelligent. Actually, intelligent people explain the most complicated things in the simplest way. So, remember that your audience doesn't have a lot of time to listen to your speech. Get the idea to be explained in a simpler way. At the same time, not being misinformed or not misinforming your audience. So make sure that your aim is for your audience to understand your message. So, for example, you can do it this way. So, how do you make your speech easy to understand? You can use the method of incorporating previews and maybe summaries into the speech. You can begin your speech with this lines. For example, you can say, "I'm here today to talk to you about 3 issues that threaten our educational system. First, blah blah blah. Second, blah blah blah. Third, blah blah blah." Right away, your audience will know what you are talking about. Okay, it will avoid confusion and misunderstanding on what you are talking about. And of course, it saves time. Or maybe you can say it this way: I've talked to you today about such and such important information because maybe I'm talking about climate change because blah blah blah. Okay? So start your speech by making sure that your audience understand what you want them to know. Okay? Another method is using strong transitions. When you say transitions, this is actually the ability to have a smooth flow of discussion with your topics by not confusing them of talking about something that is not even related to your message. Okay? Like you want to talk to the weather today, and then it so happens that you want to talk about somebody's personal life. I mean, that is not related. You have to stick and focus to your topic. Okay? Another method is you have to, for example, the lines, you can actually say it this way. But this argument makes no sense when you consider that, and then blah, blah, blah. Or you can say it this way. Another fact that supports my main point is blah, blah, blah. Okay? So there's actually a smooth transition from one idea to another so that the people could understand why you want them to know the message of your speech. Okay? Another is, this is very important again. You have to help your audience listen. Okay? You have to assist them into being on track with the discussion. A while ago, it seems like a few of you were having a confusion with what Emma Watson was talking about, regardless. So, however, you were able to point out keywords that she emphasized in her speech, which is good. The problem, I think, there is that the barrier there, I think, is that she's British and we are Filipinos. Somehow her accent maybe made you uncomfortable or unfamiliar with. But most of you actually mentioned public speakers who are Filipinos. And maybe that's because you feel comfortable and relatable with how that Filipino public figure give his or her speech. Okay? And that's really interesting to note that the young generation, your generation, actually wants to listen to people who talks that way than the usual classroom speech that you experience most of your life. Okay? I think the conversational style, using a language that you're comfortable with, is something that would make you listen. Okay? So that's the same thing with how you help your audience to listen. Okay? So again, rely on shorter, simpler sentence structures and limit pronoun use. Example of that is this way. So if you're using the English language, the example of that is this. Okay, we have two sentences here. The first one is a complicated sentence. The second one is easier to understand. Okay, so for example, the product which was invented in 1908 by Orville Z. McGillicuddy in Des Moines, Iowa, and which was on store shelves approximately 1 year later, still sells well. So more likely, the first sentence has a lot of information to take in. Okay, and it is distracting for the reader or even for the listener. So why not state it this way? Orville McGillicuddy invented the product in 1908 and introduced it into stores shortly afterward. Almost a century later, the product still sells well. So by being able to cluster information and put them in parallel to each other would make you understand the information more, and it will be easier for your audience to absorb the information. Okay? Another thing is this. You have to limit your pronouns. Okay? So the first pronoun, the first example is a pronoun problem, because the last sentence, the one I have highlighted, this cannot continue, is actually a little bit confusing, because the first information given has a lot to take in. Okay? And what do you mean by this cannot continue? What information should not continue? Okay? Is it the US government protecting us? Is it the scourge that the reality TV is affecting us because they're showing sex, violence, and petty conflicts, and therefore it diminishes our sense of human nature? Okay, what should not continue? Okay, so the second sentence is more specific, that we should not continue the failures that is being shown in public television. That there are some things in public television that should not continue anymore, because it could be a failure into encouraging us to always put value on our human nature. Okay? So again, you have to limit. That was what we mean by limiting pronouns. No, you have to be very specific on the certain information that you think should be absorbed by your audience, by your listeners, or by your readers. Okay, what should continue and what should not, which is actually shown in this type of example. The next tip is to keep your audience interest. How do you keep people interested of you? If you are a celebrity or if you're a vlogger, how do you keep your audience interested? Like, how do you maintain that you are actually an interesting person or an interesting speaker? How do you make people keep their interest of you. Okay? So you have the following sub-tips on this particular tip. Incorporate rhetorical strategies such as ethos, pathos, logos. Use statistics and quotations sparingly. Watch your tone. Okay, the second one, statistics and quotations. Try to look for researches. Okay, let's say for example, according to a research, Filipinos' English ability have diminished over time, and therefore the Asian country who has very good English speakers for a non-native country, a non-native English-speaking country is South Korea. Before it was the Philippines. But now the Philippines is actually identified to having people whose English-speaking ability is diminishing over time. Even though in the Philippines, our medium of instruction is English. Okay? So it seems like they're telling us that there are Filipinos whose English capability is diminishing. And that's going to be problematic because we have been holding that throne for many years. So you can use that as an example of statistics and quotations. Another is watching your tone. Okay? When you actually, tone has something to do with your attitude towards a topic. Okay? I think in our terms, we use the term, we are very, when we try to talk about something in a negative way, or maybe we are using the tone or quality of a voice in a condescending manner, meaning we have a negative attitude towards a topic, and that's why we sometimes raise our voice, we sometimes shout at people, even though we should, it's okay that we are not doing that. Okay, those could be some things that we have to take note when it comes to keeping our audience interest. Okay, and then the first one, it looks like this. We call this rhetorical devices. Okay, so what is rhetorical devices? These are actually methods, okay, on how you can improve your ability in writing and delivering your speeches. We have ethos, appeal to ethics. We have pathos, appeal to emotion, and logos, appeal to logic. So what is ethos, pathos, and logos? So ethos means your appeal to audience when it comes to establishing credibility and trustworthiness as a speaker. You cannot speak about a topic you do not know of. Okay? Pathos is actually being able to appeal to your audience emotions. And then logos is using facts, statistics, and logical arguments when you write or deliver your speech. So meaning, you have to use your credibility or your character. You also have to evoke your audience emotions. And every argument should be supported by facts. It should be the truth. So you appeal to the person's heart, mind, and soul. Only then can you be convinced, persuaded on the speech. So when writing your speech, these are the things that you need to remember. You don't just speak, you don't just stick with the emotions. You also have to stick with the facts. Okay? You don't talk about things that you don't know of. Even you don't talk about things that you did not research about or you have never read about. Okay? So it's very important that these rhetorical devices are also incorporated in your speech writing and even in your public speaking. Next is you have to create an effective conclusion. So you can create an effective conclusion by restating your main points, but do not repeat them. When you say do not repeat them, you don't have to say the same thing over and over again. The most important thing is to maintain the idea that you want the audience to know. You can state it in many different ways, but the idea must be consistently there. Okay? So I'm talking about consistency of ideas. You can say it this way. I asked earlier why you should care about the rainforest. Now I hope it's clear that, okay, you are restraining your main points and then trying to say it one way or another. And then another thing is, remember how Mrs. Smith couldn't afford her prescriptions under our plan? Okay? So this is the type of technique wherein you restate your main point, but at the same time you're saying it again by not repeating the same words over and over again. So like what I've said a while ago, consistency of ideas should always be present in your speech writing. Okay? Next step is to call to action. This is very important. A while ago, I've been saying about impact. You also had a divided opinion on whether the goal of Emma Watson in her speech was achieved. Some of you said yes, some of you said no. And that's very significant because it could be that her call to action was not as effective as it should be. Okay? You do understand that she was looking for gender equality, okay, regardless of race, regardless of nationality. But again, some of you might not be truly convinced on why we should promote gender equality and why is it important for us as listeners, specifically as Filipinos, on why we should promote gender equality and why we should agree with her points. And it could be that her speech lacks the call to action. So it might have been better if she had placed much importance or even emphasis on what she wants us to do after we heard her speech. Okay? So it's very important that you persuade people on the actions that they should take after they have listened or they have read to your speech. The next tip, this is very important, you need to practice your presentation. And some of us are actually very, very conscious of our speeches, or some of us might be having a difficulty on how we can present or maybe have someone check or edit our speeches. Okay? So practice is very important. Now, writing your speech is different from delivering it. Okay? So before you deliver your speech, make sure that you have checked and edit the words and information that you have written in your speech. Okay? Do not just post it in social media and then share it with a lot of people if you did not confirm the facts or you did not confirm the information that you have written in your speech. Okay? We have experiencing a lot of misinformation and fake news nowadays. It does not add to the chaos. Might as well verify if what we are putting out there or what we are posting out there is truth or is it based on facts. Okay? So then you practice your presentation. Okay? You can actually do it by facing a mirror and then giving your speech so that you know what you look like when you give your speeches. And then, or maybe you can practice it with a friend and let your friend, evaluate your performance. So that could also be something that I think would be easier for do, regardless of whether it's an in-person speeches or giving of speeches through in-person setup or maybe through a virtual setup. Okay. Again, it's very important to review every single part of your speech, identify which part of your speech is boring, or which part of your speech is effective, which part of your speech lacks persuasion, lacks arguments, which part of your speech is important, which part of your speech you can delete because it is less significant or not significant at all. Okay? Look at what you are writing. Review what you are writing before you deliver them in an audience. Okay, so the task for this one are the following. Okay, so I think if you look at the Google Classroom, you see there the module for speech writing. You have there things, you have the important information that I will be giving you. So we have writing your speech. Okay, you are going to write a speech by telling us a story from your experience. But make sure that this experience is something that you are comfortable in sharing in class. Okay? So I'm not saying that if you have like the worst experience, it's actually more effective to talk about it. No, but rather, not like that, but rather I want you to tell us a story, okay, from your experience that you're comfortable in sharing in public. And then make sure that you put emphasis on the following points. You have their tone and emphasis. Now, tone is actually your attitude as a speaker and how this attitude will be perceived by the audience as the overall message. When you deliver a speech, it could be, the linguistic term for that could be something of a voice pitch. Like, would you like to deliver your speech in a formal tone, informal tone, maybe factual tone, assertive tone, or friendly tone, or maybe the most common one, the conversational tone. But when writing a speech, when we say tone, it has something to do with what is your attitude or the feeling that you evoke when you are writing that speech, or when the reader reads the speech that you have written. Okay? And then emphasis has something to do with the keywords or maybe phrases that you want to give special prominence or special weight in your speech. A while ago, you made mention of sexuality, gender equality, discrimination. Those are actually keywords in Emma Watson's speech. And it's good that she was able to put emphasis on it so that it had left an impression to you as listeners of her speech. So when writing a speech, also identify what are the words, keywords or phrases that you want your let's say readers, to always remember whenever they actually after they have read your speech, rather. So and anything that you want them, any word or phrase that you want to leave an impression, a strong impression to your readers when you write your speech. Okay? So after you have written your speech, the next thing you need to do is to deliver your speech, the speech that you wrote. So perhaps you could look at the instructions that I have placed in the module. Okay, so you have to, number one, again, identify your purpose. Why are you telling us that story? Say, for example, you want to tell us the story about what happened to your house. The house that you lived in when you were still, let's say, in grade school, but then you transferred to another house. But then it seems like the old house that you used to live in had left an impression to you until this very time and age. So why are you telling us about that old house that you have lived before? Okay? And then it's very important that you submit and email the speech that you have wrote. Make sure it is in PDF file, that there will be no alterations in the document. And then highlight or encircle the words that you want to emphasize. Now, these are the keywords and key phrases that you want your readers or listeners to always remember when it comes to your speech. Practice your speech that you have written before you record your speech. The video must last 2 to 3 minutes long. Okay, so then the minimum is 2 minutes, maximum of 3 minutes. You can use visuals. You can use PowerPoint presentations or any visual style that you would like to incorporate in your recorded speech. Okay, and it's also important that you submit the PDF file of the speech that you have written, once again, together with a recorded video of your speech. Okay, so this is your chance to record, edit, practice, of course, before you submit your final work, before you submit your final assessment. Okay? Later on, we will agree on when you will submit this one, because you need a lot of time for this. Okay? Since just identifying the topic alone of what story you want to tell us might take a lot of time for you. Like what I've said, just share with us a story, an experience that you're comfortable in sharing. Okay? And I will post in Google Classroom when you will submit this. By the way, this is actually a major requirement for proposed communication. So I will tell you we will agree on the deadline so that you can check your calendar and you can manage your time and really make the time to do these things. So again, submit submit in PDF file the speech that you have written, and then record and submit the recording of that through email. So they have to be submitted together. Since I will be looking at the speech that you have written, and I'll also be watching how you deliver that speech. Okay, so this is going to be in connection with the next few speeches that you are going to make in class. This is still the initial stage because I want to identify your skills when it comes to public speaking, and of course I also want to identify your skills in writing speeches. Okay, so let me show you the rubric for this one so that you will know how I will grade you. I will be grading you using the following. I'll share my screen again. Okay, can you see it? Okay, so this is, okay, good.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the rubric that I will be using when I look into your work. Okay, so this one talks about speech writing. So you have the following criteria: content and ideas, organization, vocabulary or word choice, voice. Voice is actually the same thing with tone, and then sentence fluency, and then conventions. Okay, so the maximum score for each of the criteria is 6. Okay, minimum of 1. So 6 meaning it exceeds expectations. 1 does not meet expectations. So look at the description why I will grade you the following numbers from 6 to 1. 6 the highest, 1 the lowest. So this will be the things I will consider when I grade your work. It has something to do with the speech that you have written. Okay? The other one is the storytelling rubric. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so there is actually a total points of 80 for storytelling, the recorded storytelling that you will submit by sending it through my email. And we have the following criteria: understandable story with a storyline, because it is storytelling after all, and then your creativity, your clarity and correctness of your signs. Let's say, for example, how you were able to deliver, okay, the story. Next is grammar. Another criteria is role shifting, eye gaze, and use of space rather. Appearance, confidence, and preparation, because it's very important that you turn on your videos when you record your. Of course, it's very important that you don't only use, let's say, electronic slides, but it's very important that I see you as a storyteller. So make sure that you turn on your cameras when you record your storytelling or your stories that you're going to tell us. And then lastly is fluency. So it is graded according to the following descriptions. Superior gains the highest point, which is 10, and then the lowest is 0, which is emerging. But I doubt I can give you a 0, because one way or another, I'm sure you have your skills on how to tell your stories. And it's just interesting on how you're going to do that when it comes to your creativity, when it comes to the tone or your voice as a storyteller. After all, you are telling us your story. So I guess you could be able to pull this off, and I'm actually excited to see what stories you're going to tell us and how you're going to tell us these stories. Okay, so those are the rubric on how I will grade the speech that you have written and how you will deliver your speech. Your main aim is to tell us a story. Okay, so it's storytelling, which is based on your experience. So it's going to be a first-hand experience from you as the storyteller. Okay, so I'm now going back to my slides. By the way, do you have any questions? Or things that you would like to clarify? Yes, Diane?
Ma'am, pwede ka nang mangayo may copies sa imuhang mga slides?
Sure. I will post it through Google Classroom.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think another one was, yes, Ronalyn?
Ma'am, good afternoon. Ikaw ba ang makakita sa among speech, ma'am?
Yes, I will be the only person who will see your speech.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Any other question? So again, this will be a major requirement for the class. Okay, so I hope you can be able to do. So I hope you can prepare for this one. Anyway, I will give you enough time to do these things. Okay, so it's not like I'm going to require you to submit it right away, but I will give you enough time to do it. You're probably an estimate. I think I will set the deadline for this one before your final exams. Okay, I will announce the deadline tomorrow. So to end this class, yes. Someone?
Ma'am, dili pwede.
Yes.
Dili pwede nga sa uban nga storya nga mong katanog speech, ma'am.
As long as you got to experience it. Like it could be, because it's storytelling and you are going to tell us an experience that a story that you have experienced. It's very important that you have experienced it yourself. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Any other clarification? Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yes, Jazan?
If this would be the equivalent of 3, the handwritten, verbal. If I'm not mistaken, ma'am, is this a equivalent of 3? The written, verbal, and the virtual? Am I right?
Yes. The storytelling is actually recorded, so it's a virtual presentation. So you need to, in other words, you have two requirements. The first one is the speech that you have written. Okay, a story that you have experienced yourself, you're going to write that. And then the story that you have written, okay, the speech that you have written will be delivered as a recorded speech. So in other words, written and verbal. Yes, another one.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Miss Yabes?
Can we put captions, ma'am, or any visual aids, ma'am, sa video, ma'am?
Yes, I encourage you to do so since this is going to be virtually submitted. Virtually done and submitted through email. So if you can actually incorporate visuals, that's good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Any other clarification? Alright, so if there is none, so let me end the class with the words of Alexander Gregg. He was actually an Episcopal clergyman and he was the first bishop of Texas. So I don't think you have heard of him. Okay, you might be unfamiliar with this man, but he has proven to be someone who have given a lot of motivation and inspiration to a lot of public speakers and speechwriters all over the world. According to Alexander Gregg, born 1819, he passed away in 1893 as a clergyman, he said that there are three things to aim at in public speaking. He said the following: first, you have to get into your subject. Then, you have to get your subject into yourself. Lastly, you have to get your subject into the heart of your audience, which means that you need to identify your purpose and you need to make sure that you know what your purpose is. Then, share that purpose to others. In other words, you cannot say or talk about something you do not understand. Okay, remember the rhetorical devices or strategies: ethos, pathos, and logos. And also remember that you are not just a speaker. You have your audience right there. Whether it is an in-person presentation or a virtual presentation, always think of your audience. Okay? As a public speaker, you have to be responsible on the information that you put out there. Okay? Never be misled by false testimonies or misinformation. Don't be someone who is a source of misinformation. Remember your core values: academic excellence, social responsibility. This entails honesty, responsibility, and accountability. So let us be accountable on what we put out in public. Now, public speaking, speech writing is an exercise of democracy. Okay? The problem is not what you say, but it's how you say it. So I hope that you will be comfortable in expressing yourself in public, okay, by not demeaning anything or anyone, but by putting emphasis on respecting other people's culture, value, and beliefs, but at the same time being someone who shares your experience, your ability, your skill, so that we could be better citizens for our country and better people for this planet. So I hope that I was able to impart an impression of my class for this afternoon, since we have been using that word one way or another, impression. I hope that I was able to share something that will be useful to you, not only as my students, but also as students who are enrolled in a particular degree program at SIC. And this is not something that's limited only in the purposive communication class. This is also something that could be useful in your other classes, especially after you graduate from college. So I hope that everyone could be mindful on what we post and say online. And I hope that we will be genuine and generous enough to share what we know and what we have experienced to the audience, for them to get to know more things, like share what you got to share. Okay? And I hope that the information we share is something that can be useful for others as well. So if you have no questions, I think that's it. I will now end my class. It's 4:06 on my clock. Thank you everyone for coming to the class this afternoon. I'll see you in our next session. So if you have no questions, thank you. You can now leave Google Meet.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye. Thank you for your
Thank you, ma'am.
cooperation. Good job, everyone.